if the world, let's just say the world goes to hell in a handbag, and I can't go to the store and I can't get that anymore, then what are my options? I mean, I'm actually I'm doing high tunnels in the Bego beds. I'm doing container gardening because I have all these mineral tubs left over from my cows and I want to throw them away. So I'm putting, I'm growing in them. And then I also grow in the ground. And I'm being honest. I believe in the very near future, the only way I'm going to be able to continue to grow anything is I'm going to have to switch over to the Bego beds and the containers in order to be able to take my pH tester and go from pot to pot and trying to, as best as I can, figure out what's missing and how I can add something back to keep my minerals up in those pots. I was just totally floored by the difference in different parts of our country that I've been in as to how different the food is in different places. When I was in Ohio with the Amish, I actually studied with the Amish. Their corn was like 16 to 18 inches was an ear of corn. It was a normal ear of corn. Down here, if you get a 10-inch ear of corn, you've done really, really good. And they told me, said, well, you can't grow the corn down there because y'all don't have any soil down there. We have all the soil up here and where we're at, the good soil. You just have to do the best you can do down south there because y'all are all sand down there. And
Clay.
and clay, I'm coming to the conclusion there's truth to that. I mean, there's places in the country that are just is intended to grow luscious food, and then there's places in the country like we're tropical down here, subtropical, I guess you could call it. We can grow citruses and stuff like that. Now we'll have a freak cold spell come through every so often and kill some of them, but we can grow citruses in the up there where all this rich soil is at. They can't grow citruses up there unless they go through a tremendous amount of work to provide a facility to grow something like that in. So I don't know, David. What is your thoughts on eating in season as far as health is concerned? Because I believe wherever you live at on the planet, your body needs whatever is grown in that area at any particular time of the year, whether if it's in the summertime, then whatever's grown in the summertime, that's what your body needs to deal with that kind of climate. And whatever you store for the winter, like crops that are winter squashes, pumpkins, things to this nature, onions, cabbages, collards for the cold weather, that's what your body needs during the cool weather months. I mean, I'm beginning to look at this because of we're talking about food shortages coming, not being able to grow certain things and being able to, the key thing to being able to survive is being able to stay healthy because there's just not going to be the access to healthcare probably like we're used to now eating in season. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that as far as, I mean, what the way you're looking at it?
This is not a toothpaste. It's a revolution for your teeth. Remineralize, strengthen teeth, all natural ingredients, essential oils, minerals, salts, Alpha Vedic Dental Solutions System. That's alphavedic.com/civilization. We're always trying to bring you the best products here that we think will enhance your life, especially if supply chains break down further or if there's some disruption in our lives here. It seems in the news more and more possible, but hey, who knows? Maybe it's a mind game. But what is not is keeping your dental health up. And not a lot of people are talking about this. We always see the storable foods. But what about dental care during these same emergency situations? Will your toothpaste eventually run out? Well, if it does, then what? So we're, like I say, this whole micro gut biome is driven by your oral cavity first. So take a look at what they have, alphavedic.com/civilization. Every purchase you make helps keep our live radio show and podcast on air, bringing you more information just like this. alphavedic.com/civilization. That link is in the show notes below. And as always, I appreciate your valuable time and joining us in this ever and most important conversation as we move forward in our world. Well, you kicked that thought off when you told me about the potatoes there. You know, we're having all these trade tariff wars, and this would be a reason not to export or not be able to export. Because you said it, with these countries that were having shortages, would they export or would they become a non-exporter? Because if you became a non-exporter, that would raise a lot of red flags. Like, why'd all these countries just suddenly stop exporting? But if we have all these trade wars going, tariffs and all these things, it makes perfect sense. Nobody would even blink an eye at that. And another thing, perhaps it is a way to get us to do exactly what you're talking about, is bring us back local, bring us back eating seasonally, because that's perhaps the way it's going to be. These long supply chains that we've, developed over the decades, those are shortening and closing off completely. They got food wars down in Mexico. The cartels are fighting over crops. Like getting an avocado out of Mexico, does that count as a local food, at a certain time versus somewhere way down in South America at a different time, or something out of Africa that would be at a different time and season as well. But if it now be a government or be all the governments of the world, and you understand these shortages are coming in, there's going to be disruptions in food supply. Would you not try to explain away why exports are not moving anymore? Okay, tariffs. But then would you also try to get people back to eat locally again? Because that's pretty much what you're going to have. And if you can reduce that farm to plate distance of having people eat within 500 miles of their locations, then it would be really seasonal at that point. And, have you seen really anything in the media to get us to move that way? Because generally you'll start to see all kind of different ad campaigns to get you to do this and do that. Oh, the Maha movement. Yeah, let's eat healthy again. Again, you start to see a little of this drip in here of let's eat healthier. Oh, healthier is local. Healthier is go know your farmer. They're already starting at the cusp of it, but I really don't see it in this like deep, never ending, like, morning, noon, and night, every top of the hour on every newscast, eat local foods, eat local foods. It's just not there yet, but it could be. And definitely I've read a few things here and there about the benefits. It's more about the benefit of the soil and the uptake from that soil, because you're living in, if you drink spring water like we do, you're getting that symbiosis of energies from the earth and the soil that are for you in that area there. So it makes definite sense that if I ate a container full of food from, Chile, and I'm living way up here in Tennessee, yeah, it's food, it's workable, but it's probably going to have a different magnetic signature on it as well, being in a different hemisphere. And then it comes from a different soil base. So my body absorbing that versus what I can get from my hand right out here, or what I grew, because, there's energy transferred from you to the plants as well. So I think there's a lot of substance in that health wise. So how do the governments get us to go take that on and adopt it, as they try to get us to adopt solar panels and windmills and all this stuff? At some point, they're going to have to roll us over into, you got to eat local. Now, once that comes, then that we're at the edge of that. What point would you? I don't even know what to term that point as. Is start eating local, then we know we've reached a certain point. And what would you term that?
Well, I think when it comes down to the simple fact that fuel gets to become such a huge issue that it's going to cost too much to truck food to specific regions. And then you have to stop and think. I can buy, when I was up north, when I was living in Connecticut, I could go in the dead of winter and I could buy bell peppers, I could buy strawberries, I could buy bananas, stuff like this. That is not seasonal. That is a luxury at that point. When you start eating that way, then you're talking about luxuries. And I don't think people actually realize what luxury is when it comes to food. I think we're we've seen such a large disconnect from the food system and what it actually is until we don't actually know what real food is anymore. I watch a great deal of. I don't watch a great deal. I have over the years I have looked into the older ways of growing things and what our forefathers grew. Okay, basically, I guess is what I'm trying to say is what our forefathers grew to maintain their health. Now, we do know that the soil is being depleted. We know that because uh, there's I've checked my food. We're having. I mean, I do soil tests on my property every year because I don't care what you do and what you grow, your soil every year becomes depleted of something. And I've actually do tests just to see. I
You
did
said
a
nitrogen,
test
right? I think I'd seen you were talking about that where your nitrogen levels got low every single year, so you needed to
every
reapply
year.
nitrogen.
Every year I have to put nitrogen, I have to put magnesium, I have to put calcium,
Hmm.
and the plants, yes, the plants take some of that stuff up. But David, it's not taking all of it up. I mean, I don't know where it's going. I don't know if the sun, with what's going on with the solar system and the intensity of the sun, is actually pulling the nutrition out of the soil by baking the top layer of it. I mean, I don't know. I'm not that intelligent about that part of it. I'm trying to learn and trying to figure it out. But every year, I'm having to add these things back to. I have yet to get my pH to 6.8 and keep it there and not have to lime every year.
Are you using seashells for the calcium, or what are you doing for calcium spread out there?
It's a dolomite lime.
That's a dolomite lime, yeah. Like you wouldn't think lime would be affected by UV or solar radiation or any types of sunlight because I mean that's a it's those gray pellets then that come in
Yeah,
that sort of see-through bag, yeah.
yeah,
You wouldn't think that would be really affected. Like for us, we have these grapevines growing along our gravel driveway, which is limestone. So for me, I'm the complete opposite. I'm always adding coffee grounds out there to trying to bring the pH down. We put sulfur out there as well because being right next to a limestone driveway, that is doing exactly what you're talking about every year, is taking that to the uber on the pH high, high, high. They don't like it that high, so I'm always battling to try to bring the pH down. And we got 450 feet of gravel driveway that we've put grapevines along the fence coming up to the house here, so it's always trying to rebalance that pH whatever form it takes. Nature is always wants to let things run off and just move the soil into a different place. Like, you get a lot of movement of soils too, and things are always filling in and low spots. And
yeah, yeah. Nitrogen has to when you put it out, you got to have it underneath the soil instantly because within 30 minutes the sun can literally leach. You can watch it melt on top of the ground. Of course, now I realize they use salt, in it to help it to be able to melt and go into the soil. But I'm actually experimenting, and David, I know a lot of people think this is probably witch magic or something other, but I'm experimenting with electroculture because of
oh, me too.
I've done a ton of research, and it's been used in Europe for years. I have a peach orchard, and if you've watched my videos, I have a peach orchard where I'm using these electroculture rods that Mr. Mickey has made for me. The trees are growing exponential. I mean, they're growing like weeds. And I have another fruit orchard that I purposely have not put the first electroculture rod in that is in better soil than the one that has the electroculture rods. I mean the trees, I planted them, they were a foot high, they're still a foot high a year later. The ones that I planted with the electroculture rods were a foot high, and now they're 6 and some of them 10 feet high.
Man.
I mean, a lot of people have mocked me and made fun of me, but I don't care if it works, it works. That's the way I'm looking at it.
I'll tell you my story too, because we had 16-foot hog panel and we just bent it over and we put our tomato plants, but you know, they're cherry tomatoes, and they grew well above that thing, up 10 feet tall. People were shocked how tall our tomatoes were. But again, they had a trellis system to base and brace themselves off of so they wouldn't get any stem breakage. But we had that problem last year because I just took some copper wiring and ran it down the hog panel all the way down on both sides, about in two different spots, one up near the crest and then one about maybe, you know, knee high off the ground. And I'm telling you that we've had some amazing results with that, just straight up copper wiring that you can find at any hardware store, sometimes on sale, sometimes it's not. It doesn't have to be a certain gauge either. I know there's a preferred gauge as well as some 19 gauge or whatnot, a little bit thinner when you're getting up, but you know, any copper wiring will work. And remarkable results. Just shocked on how tall those things grew above the hog panel that was folded over, you know. So you're talking good 8 feet tall because I'm 6'4" and I can walk under it, not even thinking about scraping my head. I'm fully standing up and still have a lot of clearance under it.
Right.
So, and they were growing well up there, well above that. And it's like, whew, now I almost need to get a ladder to go harvest my tomatoes, which is like, if you think to tell somebody I need a ladder to go harvest my tomatoes, people laugh at you like, what are you talking about? They're ground plant. Yeah. Not really. When you start putting them on like hog panel and letting them roll up there and then put some copper wiring on there, they'll go way up, way up. So I'm a fan with you. I totally believe it works. I've tried it before in my orchard. I made the mistake though of wrapping the copper around the trees, and then it just kind of embedded in the bark and had to strip it out. And I think did more damage to some of the young saplings versus putting it on rods like you're talking about and put it in the orchard there versus putting it on the tree. So I made some mistakes with it as well. So don't put it on your trees. Don't put it actually directly on the plants. Put it on something else as a brace or a substrate that can hold it on there for you and not really on the plant. Plants can grow around it and intermingle with it, but don't put it on the plants.
Right. I mean, well, plants are just like we are. I mean, they have cell structures. You know, they feed. They you know, whatever you feed them is how they feed you. Is the way I look at it. I mean, that's one reason I do the soil analysis every year. I mean, I do 15 different things that I'm looking for in the soil, and if I can keep them up, then what I'm doing, in my opinion, is I'm growing nutrient-dense food. And when you grow nutrient-dense food, then your body is taking in nutrient-dense food, as long as you don't destroy it by cooking it improperly. Now you can grow the most nutrient-dense food that there is out there, and if you prepare it incorrectly, you know, you've destroyed everything you've done. Now, a lot of people go, yeah, but you can a lot of your stuff, and we can a lot of our stuff, but I still will eat my home canned stuff before I'll go to a grocery store and buy it. Now, I get criticized, David. I get criticized really, really bad because I call the grocery store the stuff you get there is literally has been sprayed to death, and it is void of nutrition. All of it has been irradiated in order to give it a shelf life, to keep it on the shelves longer. I mean, I know this: the best way to control something is through food. My animals out here, I have cattle. If I want my cattle to do what I want them to do, I give them sweet feed. I can take sweet feed and I can take the worst cow I've got, and within a month, I can have that cow eaten out of my hand. And it has been a proven fact by the United States military that when you pull sugar from a civilization, you basically destroy their minds. I mean, because when you take sugar away from the brain does not function properly, and you can actually make people do anything you wish for them to do.
If you can just understand that and get around to live longer by staying out of some of these systems, then just staying out of the system.
Yeah, that what you just said is actually biblical. The Bible actually says, "Come out from among her, my people, and be separate." And I've always stopped at that point right there. I had a gentleman the other day tell me, he says, "Did you finish reading that?" And I was like, well, maybe I should go back, you know? So I went back and looked at it, and it says that you will not partake of her plagues. Now, come out of the system that you will not, and if you do that, then you're promised that you won't be a partaker of the plagues that she's going to have. So lots of people criticize me again because I don't participate and uh, I don't do what the average person does. I was the kid growing up that the parents told their kids, don't play with him, don't hang around him. He doesn't know anything, he'll never have anything. And I'm the one today who actually owns several homes and everything's paid for. And they're in debt up their eyeballs. And yeah, I mean, I'm not patting myself on the back, but what I'm saying is David, you've got to think outside the box because there is a system that's been set up for us. It was set up in the 1930s that we were programmed to think and to act a particular way. We were taught that we need to be rewarded. If you work all week, then you need to go out on the weekend, you need to be able to eat, or you need to be able to take a vacation, or you need to for your birthday, you need to do this. I mean, all this has been a plan all along, and we have fell prey to that. And you have life, but you have no quality, I guess is what I should say.
Think about that. 52 times they pulled out of your bank account by convincing you must go out on a weekend.
Yes.
Per year, 52 withdrawals, your own voluntary withdrawals versus rolling that over into something like land or
yes. I mean,
metals. Your land's looking pretty good. If anybody watches Danny there, and it's a nice piece of property that you have. And again, these types of pieces, what I'm seeing more and more is land is becoming so scarce that just the crappiest pieces of land are going up for sale. And it's just the most ridiculous, babiculous prices you'd ever even think that they could even possibly. I was like, you must have been drinking a bottle of whiskey when you put that price up. That's impossible. Nobody would ever think of paying that. That's like insane. But it is. That's what the prices they're asking now. For like hillside land that has no value, that they actually have to cut a road in with the dozer up there, they want like 10,000 plus an acre, 15, 18,000 an acre on hillside. And I'm like, man, you'd be able to get prime like pasture land for 8 to 10, and now they want that for hillsides. I'm like, so whatever, land is running scarcer. So if you're able to have it, and again, I'm just wondering if all these investment companies are just buying it all up to get it off the market. So you can't get to the point where we're talking about to get some self-sufficiency as this system changes, where there'll be nowhere to go get that self-sufficiency because the land availability is not going to be there.
The one thing I'm looking at, David, you just touched on something, is what we talked about a while ago. I'm constantly having to add to my soil every year to keep it at a particular point. Now I'm adding my compost stuff. I mean, I'm adding things to the soil constantly, and it's still depleting it. If the world, let's just say the world goes to hell in a handbag, and I can't go to the store and I can't get that anymore, then what are my options? I mean, I'm actually doing high tunnels in the Bego beds. I'm doing container gardening because I have all these mineral tubs left over from my cows and I want to throw them away. So I'm putting, growing in them. And then I also grow in the ground. And I'm being honest. I believe in the very near future, the only way I'm going to be able to continue to grow anything is I'm going to have to switch over to the Bego beds and the containers in order to be able to take my pH tester and go from pot to pot, and using my own cow manure, because I'm not buying my own hay. I'm cutting my own hay now. I let my cows graze on my own property. I don't have to worry about Graze-On, Remedy, 2,4-D. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff anymore. And using my own cow manure, putting it in those containers and trying to, as best as I can, figure out what's missing and how I can add something back to keep my minerals up in those pots. I mean, I believe in the very near future, David, I believe that's where it's going to have to be because of the magnetosphere, the gamma rays coming out of the earth. I think I'm gonna have to get up out of the earth into containers in order to be able to keep my food where I can actually, and I may not be able to grow as much. Uh, I will tell you this: I had a particular person that's pretty high up in the system. Let's just say that he told me. He says, "Start now." I'm telling you, Dan, start now changing your palate because if you don't, you're going to starve when the time comes. Now, I mean that's coming from up high.
So again, the first step, take that advice, go back to a 1915 cookbook, and you'll start to see what types of things were available and what was grown locally and what for those different recipes for holiday, Christmas, Thanksgiving, bringing it back in the middle of July or in midwinter, spring, fall. There's recipes throughout the entire seasonality, but take it back 100, 120 years in the cookbooks and see what were the common things. Because if you're telling me that, we're going to roll back to those same common things because they were common in North America and commonly grown around that. That's all they had. Because I look at those cookbooks and the recipes and the ingredients are quite simple. You look at a cookbook comparatively today, there's 50 ingredients to make a dish. Back then, there's like 10.
Right.
Just the difference in cooking as well. So, can you cook from scratch is another thing. This boxed foods and this sort of our factories, there's this huge pull and push right now for AI data centers gobbling up an enormous amount of electricity along with blockchain and this sort of technology, mining, Bitcoin, and all the whole, XRP. And there's a huge amount of computing power going into those two new industries.
Yes.
But we're not putting any new capacity online, barely enough. So where's the electricity going to come from? In the future, I do determine, and I really believe AI is going to start cutting off things for itself to gobble more electricity because humans, again, at that point are expendable. You're talking about a machine intelligence against humanity. If it needs more power, then it's going to take power from wherever it can get it to expand itself. You got to think we're talking about a consciousness that it's a different vibratory consciousness that's in insulated wiring.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's this sort of intelligence, been talked about in the past, this presence for a better term, it is going to try to pull power from wherever it can get it. And that is our factories and our homes. And if it makes you go cold in the middle of winter, this is why they want all these smart devices in so they can regulate power. So if you were AI that needed more power, you would just regulate all the humans down to almost bare bones existence. So you could pull all the extra wattage and terawatt hours into those centers. And we're just at the cusp of building these things out. I mean, the electrical demand cannot absolutely anywhere, way, shape, or form be met by 2030. And even to get the equipment, I was reading this article about Microsoft wanted to put something like 20 billion into equipment to build out more centers. And they simply don't have the equipment. Like there's literally not enough transformers. And by the time they build all this out, even if it's power on demand generation at the sites itself, these generators, and it would take them 5 to 10 years to manufacture it just to even get the generation capacity. So where's that middle measure where this thing is going to keep growing and growing and it's not going to stop and say, hey, I'll take a hiatus for 3 to 4 years while you guys catch up. No, it's going to pull power from anywhere. So factories are going to be a big one. And you see how much industry has been destroyed during the last 4 years anyway. Medium-sized enterprise, they've cut out almost anything that's not a corporation out of that entire supply chain. And usage chain would be a better term for electrical input and electrical usage. So all those thousands, tens of thousands of medium-sized factories, medium businesses, mom and pop businesses, where's all that electricity going to? Because the power generation is still here. It's not being used. It's going to the data centers now. Mm-hmm. So at some point, data center AIs are going to be smart enough to go, if we pull from all these factories, I don't care if they're food or automobiles, whatever, if we shut them all down, look at all those extra terawatt hours that we can use and consume. This is how that machine intelligence thinks. It wants to preserve itself as much as we do. You come in my house and try to get me, I'm going to fight back, guaranteed. Mm-hmm. Well, same thing with the machine intelligence. It's like its food source is energy. And if you try to turn it off, it's going to be like you were trying to kill it. Yeah. So we've rolled over into this, something that gets, that's a whole different conversation. But If our factories get shut off, then what?
Our town, David, has a huge Bitcoin mining facility in it right now.
No way.
Yes, our little small town,
No.
100 yard, less than 100 yards from the substation, is a huge Bitcoin mining facility. They ran extra power lines in here to operate that thing. It puts off so much heat it killed the timber on the property behind it, and they were forced to buy the land behind it because of the amount of heat it's putting off.
That's crazy. They usually wouldn't put it in the South like that. And that's why they're always focusing on like Iceland and places where they can get free cooling most of the year.
Yep, I'm serious. We were blown away, because we kept hearing this piece of property used to be a feed store, big feed store facility. And we kept hearing this humming coming from there. And so I got to questioning around and come to find out they're mining Bitcoin there. And now they've made it a 2-story building. And it's the fans on the back of this thing are astronomical. I mean, the amount of, you can't even go back in behind it back in there. It's so hot from the heat that thing is blowing out back there. And literally, I hate to say this, but down the road from me is a projected 4,200 acres of solar panels is being put in. They're already putting in the power lines. They're already putting in the substations and all that stuff for 4,200 acres of solar panels to go in.
Wait, Dana, let me ask you, how much cropland is in there that's going to be lost in that project?
No cropland in this, timberland. It was 7,000.
Oh, even worse.
Yeah, the carbon, you know what I'm saying? I mean, there's nothing to create oxygen to eat up the carbon anymore. I mean, they're taking all the timber. They're stripping the timber off of it right now. There'll be no more timber.
4,200. That's a large piece of property. That's an enormous amount of trees.
4,200 acres of solar panels. They're doing they're driving pylons in the ground right now, doing a 6-month stabilization test on it right now. We're praying that it fails, but the timber's already been stripped. I mean, they're working on that now. They're just stripping the timber off of it. And then between me and town, I have a friend who owns close to 1,000 acres. He's done put it over into carbon credits, because he can make more off of carbon credits than he can trying to use it for his own good and make a living on it. And I hate to see that, because once it goes into carbon credits, he explained to me what all's happening. He can't touch the land anymore. I mean, he'll own it. His kids will own it, but he can do nothing with it from this point forward, or his family can't do anything with it. And because basically the government has come in and they're going to be planting timber on it, planting trees and, all this kind of stuff, which I'm all for that. And they're putting in test wells to make sure that the water stays pristine in it and all this kind of stuff, But he's selling carbon credits. I mean, I guess, you do what you got to do, I suppose. But David, there's things happening around us down here in the South I never would have ever believed would have happened. I mean, you go in and Google the solar fields around us. An hour and a half north of us, another huge solar field. Another one is projected to go in 30 minutes from that one, another huge solar field. I don't know if they're projecting that maybe there's just going to be that much more sun down here. I don't know.
Danny, thank you so much for coming on. I know it's getting toward the chores time and whatever else you got going on online. And please check out Danny over at Deep South Homestead over on YouTube, doing porch time, talking many issues just like this. So, it's great that other people are talking too, to try to get us in a conversation and find solutions as we transit through this. So what did you take out of listening to us talk here? Hopefully you got some sort of metric on how it's moving and how he and I are preparing, and then maybe what you can do or have a discussion with your family members or neighbors, neighborhoods, the community on what you might want to do as well, because it's all going to come down to the food. And if you are growing food as a community, that's probably a good thing to start. Any comment there, Danny? And the last thing to sign us off.
Yeah. Also, check us out over at Deep South Homestead at Pecan Grove. That is our new channel that we have. This is where we're growing everything at now. We have actually purchased a farm, and we are growing and building the farm because I was only on 10 acres. at Deep South Homestead. Now we are on a lot larger farm because I realize what's coming. I've got to be able to do a better job at what I was doing to be more sustainable. And David, thank you for having me on with you. I really appreciate the fact that I have friends. I'm gonna call you a friend because I believe that's what you are. Like you, that's like-minded and is kind of got the same kind of head on your shoulders that we got here. It's always good to fellowship with someone that's like-minded.